You know what I'm saying? Play a little background music for this next session. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna split up into like three. But our voices should be able to be heard on
Hmm?
the ear, right?
No, say that again, Harry.
No, don't sound like you can hear me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah, it looked like it was a lag or it broke up or something.
Oh, okay. All right. It probably is that little music I'm playing in the background. But do you dig what I'm saying?
Regarding
Everything I just said, man. In the
what?
last session, in the last part of the session, you know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, yes, yeah. Um, it. I mean, going in is difficult. It's painful. It can be painful. It can be frightening because you may not you may not know what you go find, or maybe it's painful because you know what you will find. I don't. So yeah, you may be aware there's some stuff in here that I don't want to deal with, and so yeah, yeah.
That's it. That don't sound exciting, though.
Right.
That don't sound exciting at all. Like,
Right.
and I
Right.
believe that it's not exciting or doesn't sound exciting uh, because it's not. Like, pain, there's nothing fun about pain. Like, experiencing pain, going through pain.
Right.
But it's like, what is birth after that?
Right. Right.
That's the thing. Freedom exists on the other side of my fears.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I can see clearly now that the rain is gone.
Right. 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 Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Right.
eh, the storm don't last forever.
Yeah.
It
True.
don't last always. But it feels like when we experience pain that it's lasting forever.
Right.
And if we don't face it, that pain then festers until it turns into extended suffering,
Right.
you know? But when we face it, the exciting part of that, for me anyway, is the amount of choices I see.
And that is, I mean, just listening to what you just told you described. If you're going to experience pain either way, because what you described is pain. It's pain if you stay there. It's pain if you do the work to grow. Where do you want to experience this pain, and do you want it to continue? Because if you're gripped by fear or some self-deception or whatever it is, to where you decide to just sit in whatever misery you have out of fear of the pain you go experience to address it, all right? Or do you sit there and suck it up, put on big boy, big girl pants, and say, we go pull the pain card that's gonna lead to healing? Which one you go do?
And I'm gonna say this because I don't believe they even have to suck it up.
Okay.
It goes back to what we were saying before. Acceptance,
Okay.
not tolerance.
Right.
Not acquiescence.
Mm.
But
Well, what is acceptance? Explain
there we go. There we see. This is what we need because even though we're saying the same words, we could have read from different dictionaries or encyclopedias. So yeah, yeah. Like what is acceptance? We telling people to accept. What is acceptance?
Right.
It is letting go of our resistance to the present moment. It's letting go of our wants, or interpreted in our faith. The Lord is my shepherd; I shall not want. You see, this mind, our mind never ceases in wanting things. It always wants something. And when it gets what it thinks that it needs to be finally satiated, it wants something else. What do men with power want? More power.
Right.
And absolute power corrupts absolutely
Absolutely. Right. Right.
because there's no point at which the mind, the ego mind, running wild without any true guidance, it could ever be satiated. So it always wants. And when we have what we don't want, then we feel these lower emotions, which represents preference. In Buddhism, Buddha, he says that all of human suffering are the result of two things: attachment and desires. Attachment and desires. That wanting. But there's a difference between, we make a difference in our faith between wanting and desiring. Because while it says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, it also says in Psalm 37:4, delight thyself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. But it's not a matter of semantics with the words, it's a matter of location. One is located in the head, the other is located in the chest. What's located in the head always wants. What's located in the chest, connected to the true self, has always held for you your deepest and most cherished desires.
Mm, mm, mm.
It's right there,
So I
but
hear.
it's like you gotta like see it. You know what I mean? Like it's an experience.
Mm,
It's truly an experience, and then in that experience, which I know you know that experience. Acceptance is, it has a number one behind it because I kept this up here since I did my last live stream last year. Well, New Year's, around New Year's Eve, but before that, not on New Year's Eve. And I was going through the lit effect, but acceptance is the first stage of that. The second stage of that is clarity, because once you let go of your resistance to the present moment, it can now just flow, be as it is. You see, we try to force things to happen, and the things that we try to push away because the ego doesn't understand, the mind has limited understanding of the nature of spiritual truths. It doesn't realize that whatever we resist persists. And so through pushing it away, we ensure that it comes right on back. We try to pull things towards us, wanting. And through pulling things towards us, we end up pushing those things that we want towards us further away. We can't have what we want because internally, life doesn't give us what we want, but who we are. So if
mm, mm.
calibrated to that of wantingness, then I'm going to invite in more wantingness, the experience of more wantingness.
Right. Right.
That's what a whole, you know, that's what a whole faith thing happened at too, because this is what I see. We're still dealing with what it is I see. I understand all these spiritual truths and this and that, and the mind sees things backwards, but this is what I see. Like this is what no, this is what your mind sees. And it doesn't understand what it sees, but it has to make an interpretation and a judgment because thinking is a function of the mind. So it's thinking and making interpretations and calculations based off of what it thinks it observes. But even its ability to observe is limited to a certain extent. It does not understand spirit or energy. And so it's going to go against the grain when it comes down to spiritual truths. The mind was designed, the body. I mean, if an infant can touch a hot stove and then jerk away from it, they're going to jerk away from it. Nobody need to tell the infant to jerk away from a hot stove because of the design of the mind to sense that pain and then immediately move away from pain. So it's not even that the ego or the ego mind or the pain body, it's not even that it wants to really fight against the pursuits of the higher self. It's just that it does not understand. And when it does not understand something, fear ensues. And with that fear, false evidence appearing real, it ends up pushing us in this chaos space where all we're doing is self sabotaging. Again, that's why I believe in our faith, it also talks on that. Fear not, for I am with thee. I have not given thee a spirit of fear. Like, it all goes hand in hand. You know what I mean? Like, it all goes hand in hand. I listen to a lot of, not a lot of, but because there's a few speakers, but I listen to a lot of those speeches from some famous monks, and I love the book Fear. I even recommended that to my clients. You know,
What's
like
the name of
Fear.
it? Okay.
Yeah,
Who
Fear.
wrote it?
I was hoping you didn't ask me that. It
What?
was, man. I can't pronounce the man's name yet. It's Tick Non something.
Oh, okay, okay,
It's THIC. Man, I'm gonna send it to you. I'm gonna send it
okay.
to you. THIC, maybe TNA.
Mhm.
Yeah, the name is. It's a simple way to say it, but it's just the spelling. I have it spelling in my head, and it keeps messing me up.
It's but listening to what you say, and I know this like this is your wheelhouse. Um, Especially talking about it in this way. Um, I, Listening to what you say, I'm hearing this phrase from um, a famous Catholic bishop. He used to do a show, Fulton J. Sheen, Bishop Fulton J. Sheen,
Mm,
famous bishop. He used to have shows on television,
mm,
and his show was called The Art of Living.
mm,
And and he would go into all of these moral and spiritual principles about living and dealing with fear and all of those sorts of things. And listening to what you were saying, if there's an art to living, there's an art to this. See, there's an art to this. Um, it's not all about numbers and and concrete and nails and metal. There's an art to this. There's a science part to this, but there's an art to this, to
mm,
this thing called life. And
mm,
people being able to tap into that is
mm.
um is essential to your growth and your development.
Yes, yes. And it's all a part of that. It is math. It is science. You know,
Yeah.
it's just that these our arts have been limited up until quantum mechanics to the material world, Newtonian physics. And so because that's what can be observed and studied via science, the non-material world is ignored. And it's non-existent for many, or at least in concept or thought, or reality. But the non-material, that's where these truths come from. And this is where our minds have created a reality, constructed a reality on top of actual truth. There's all when we go deep, when we start to dive deep in. Oh, let me tell my mother I'm recording. Hey, mother, hey, can I call you back? I'm recording right now. Everything all right? Okay, yeah, I'm gonna call you back. All right, bye. Where was I?
Oh, brother, yo, Lord. You were talking, oh, Lord. You were talking about the art of living. Golly, brother. We were talking about, I'm trying to keep my own track, my own thoughts on track, brother.
But there's an art, there's a science to it. The point is, there's a science to it. You know what I
That's
mean?
what you were
Like,
saying. Yeah, that's what you were saying. Yes.
it's mad because if you think about it, sometimes life is addition, especially when you're young. Life is addition.
Yeah.
You're waiting to receive those gifts on Christmas. Like waiting for those birthday parties, hang out with your friends' birthday. Like life is more of like the addition, simple math. you know. And if you are successful, later on in life, you get, multiplication. You begin to move into that multiplication stage of life.
Right.
Many of us, many of us, though, have been in a subtraction stage,
Yeah.
been feeling that deficit. And then sometimes life hits you and you go into that division stage where now stuff got to be divided. And every now and again, for us folk that, have to work for a living, we may even go to a season of long division where we look at the remainder of that equation and we like, this don't add up. What I'm gonna do with the remainder? I don't even like the
Right.
remainder. Like, what am I gonna do
Right.
with this remainder? Like this
Right.
is all that's
Right.
remaining. This is what's
Right.
remaining. You know. So
Right.
life is math. Life is science. You know, but life is also more than what we can observe and study and hear. It's more of an intuitive connection with really the cosmos, the universe. You begin to feel that connectedness. That's why the more spiritual uh, people, the like leaders like MLK, like they always had this spiritual root that allowed them to see the connectedness of all humans, and it's
Right.
in that space, that connectedness, like that's that thread. Like science can pick up on characteristics of that, such as people tend to improve in hospitals if they priest or rabbi, a minister comes by. Like studies have shown that in the past.
Right.
And I ain't put no studies down here. I'm not about to do that. I don't feel like doing that research. But you look it up for yourself. If I'm wrong, and let me know. But loved ones being in the hospital, like those types of things can be observed. But how you understand, you know, a loved one that you never spoke to in several years, and they pop in your mind and you pop in their mind and y'all end up calling each other at the same time,
Right.
you know, like that thread, that invisible thread that connects us no matter how far physically we may seem. That's that
Well, that's
foundation.
the and that's the. I mean, even and with science, you get into the scientific method and those aspects that of reality that can be measured, observed, it can be noted. But then,
Hmm.
there, you know, I've heard scientists say, science and our methods get to a certain point. We can make observations, we can draw conclusions, but then we've got to acknowledge, there's a certain point. Uh, you see what it says, and you draw your own conclusions. These are the pieces. This is what we know. This is what we can definitively say X, Y, and Z. But now this right here, this is not a scientific question anymore.
Yes, yes. There's a limit
Right. Yeah.
to
Right.
science.
Right.
Yeah, man, I like this. Mm. So Albert Einstein, because I'm good for that research. Just all I need is the idea, man. Like I love science, I really do. But Albert Einstein, he said the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible.
Right.
Oh my goodness. Isaac Newton, what we know is a drop. What we don't know is an ocean. Hmm. Uh, I don't
Wow.
know who Heisenberg. Oh yeah, Warner Heisenberg. He says not only is the universe stranger than we think, it is stranger than we can think.
Yeah, I do that.
The Heisenberg principle. Yeah, the first name it threw me off. Warner. I'm used to Heisenberg, but I think now would be a good time to pause and hold that.